Sup nerds! Recently, Capcom, and by extension Good Old Games, dropped a rapid series of announcements, all of which are pertinent to me, so we're gonna make a video to talk about it now. First off, and honestly the biggest announcement of all, to me personally, is the announcement of the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. A collection of 7 arcade games, including X-Men, Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of the Superheroes, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and The Punisher. 6 fighting games, 1 side-scrolling beat-em-up. This was just dropped kind of casually during a Nintendo Direct, and I still cannot believe it, honestly. It's a big deal for me and for every Marvel vs. Capcom fan out there. As for why that is, well, at a base, these games coming back is just awesome. I play a lot of fighting games, but I consider myself a Marvel vs. Capcom player more than anything, even if all my experience is mainly in 2 and 3, so them coming back is hype for me by default. The titles in this collection, while some have been available, in the past, a majority were simply not playable, except via emulation, owning an old copy of the game, or I guess just having one of those little arcade 1-up cabinets in your place somewhere, or just the original arcade cabinet. What few that were available simply have not been available since 2013 when the licenses lapsed, assumedly. Having each of these games, alongside fluid online play and all that fun little extra stuff like galleries and a jukebox, is just tremendous. Hell, I'd like to take a second to highlight the fact that the Punisher getting tossed in is a great bonus too, since it's just one of those titles I thought would be stuck in arcade hell forever. And now if Capcom could free up AVP Arcade and Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, we'll be reaching true side-scrolling beat-em-up bliss. But to get back to the fighting game side of things, it's also a big deal to see these games coming back since, well, after that bomb of a game in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite back in 2017, us fans, even those out there that enjoyed Infinite, thought, well, that was it. That's the end of Marvel vs. Capcom as we know it, at least in terms of any new game developments. I will take a second to say here that thanks to all the efforts of the fan base, Marvel never did truly die. We got all those awesome palette swap characters for Marvel 3, a sweet comeback Evo tournament for Marvel 3 as well, and a ton of tourneys from places like TNS. And there's also even a full graphical overhaul for MVCI currently in development. But new stuff? Nah, that was never happening. Till now, at least. I don't want to sound too much like I'm huffing deep from a big canister of hopium, but these games coming back might just be a way to gauge interest in the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise as a whole again. I'll add here at the last time Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was re-released, which was the Xbox Live Arcade version back in 2009, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was announced less than a year later. Now I don't know if a turnaround would be that quick, but I can only imagine how genuinely hype it would be to see, like, the announcement at EVO 2025 for a new Marvel 4. The roof would come straight down. The collection has already rocketed into the top 200 on Steam wishlist currently, which I think is amazing for a fighting game, so I'm hoping that if it sells well at least, Capcom will know that we want another one. Plus, since the MCU has been sagging pretty hard, I imagine the license might be a bit cheaper now than it used to be. The hype for me is slowly seeping in already. I'll try not to be overly optimistic, since that's always a recipe for disaster though, but honestly, it's just awesome to finally be able to play these games with great netcode and them not being locked to something like Fightcade. Hey though, Capcom, you mind kicking some of that new netcode over to Marvel vs. Capcom 3 though? I'd be right on Ultimate again, with some new rollback netcode for it. Anyway, going past that amazing announcement, Good Old Games recently announced that 3 classic Resident Evil titles are going to be re-released on their platform. Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, of course, being sold separate or in a bundle for a reduced price. As of right now, only the first game is available for play, with the other 2 planning to be rolled out later in the year. But regardless, this is such an amazing announcement. This new re-release features a total refurbishing of the game, since this is based on the original PC version of Resident Evil. It's totally compatible with modern controllers now, and best of all, it's completely uncut, meaning more blood, more gore, and Chris Redfield smoking a cigarette. This is obviously a great thing because, well, as cool as the remake for Resident Evil 1 is, it honestly being the best remake that's ever been produced, and as good as the remake of RE2 is, it being a great modernization of its classic counterpart, it's nice that the originals are here now. It's also great that the original RE3 is back because the remake of that was absolute dog shit in comparison to the original. Even if you don't like how the original games played, game preservation is important, especially with how absolutely fucked the retro game market is these days. Doubly important since retro game preservation is in such a piss-poor state these days, with so many good games just rotting away on old consoles or just being simply unplayable. You ever tried playing an older PC game? Hell, you ever tried playing an old DOS game? That shit is completely impossible without emulation of some variety. Honestly, if emulation wasn't a thing, a majority of older games would basically just be impossible to play now, or just prohibitively expensive to play. So any company stepping up to preserve their classic games is awesome, so shout out to both GOG and Capcom for making these classics available for everyone to play. I think if you haven't given these OGs a whirl, definitely check them out. They're a big part of horror game history, after all. On to the last bit of relevant Capcom news to me. Completely out of nowhere, Capcom decided to drop Dead Rising's Deluxe Remaster. I'm not sure if I've ever brought it up at any point on this channel, but I fucking love Dead Rising. It's probably my favorite zombie game franchise, and this is yet again another series where, after the last disastrous entry, I thought I'd never see another one, but here we are. Capcom has once again left me stunned. Now, a good bit has already been shown off from this game, so I want to share my current reservations about the title on top of what looks hype as hell from what I've seen. The game seems to have an entirely new voice cast, and one part of that in particular is my biggest disappointment so far. TJ Rotolo is not voicing Frank in this game. Even worse, they didn't even bother to ask him, apparently. I consider TJ to be the Frank West, of course, so not having him back is a huge blow. I don't doubt it was probably due to, like, Capcom ducking union VAs or something. I can't say what the precise reason is, but trying to pay people less for their work is always the most sound explanation to me in any given situation. I obviously won't let that kill the hype for me because, well, the new voices I've heard so far are alright. Though I don't know if they'll match how iconic the originals are. New Chapman definitely doesn't have the same energy for certain. This is my store! This is my store! But honestly, as long as everyone doesn't do as bad a job as Lily Gao did in Ada in the RE4 remake, I'll be content. To say a positive thing about the entirely new cast, though, it seems like every character is now 100% fully voiced in-game, not just like in the original, with little moans and screams and offhand dialogue that randomly gets said in-game. Survivors and Psychos are fully talking now. Graphically, the game is now in the RE engine, and it really does look fantastic. Except for Frank's hairline, that got massacred worse than Willamette. The characters that have been shown off so far otherwise look pretty good, though. I'll comment on the one that has a very blatant change to him. I had no idea that this was Larry Chiang on first glance, which, while I am a bit sad they changed him since everybody in Dead Rising is a super over-the-top wacky stereotype, I get it. I get it, really. Amazingly, Capcom has also kept the game's original animation, so it just feels so familiar to me. I'm glad they didn't replace anything, even the most basic baby punches that Frank does. It doesn't seem like they're changing the story beats up either, so I'm very happy for that too. Something I do want to gripe about, though, is the adding of an auto-save system, which I don't really like. I think the static save points of the original genuinely help elevate the survival experience of that original game. Hopefully they'll give you the ability to disable it, since I'd rather keep the original experience in that regard. On to some QOL stuff I've noticed that I think is genuinely a big deal. Let's start with the biggest one. They added a ramp leading up to the safe house vent, which is an incredible change. If you've ever played the original Dead Rising, you know that the greatest enemy to escorting survivors wasn't the zombies, or cultists, or psychos, it was this one fucking block of concrete. Life is pain! I'm glad it's been replaced. Doubly so, since if you had one of those crippled survivors, like Lei, for instance, you had to drop her in front of that concrete brick and hope she climbed up it quick enough to be able to get to the safe house with her. So, 100% glad that's gone. Even more so, since it seems like the 8 survivor limit from the original is gone. Looking at certain screenshots, Frank has a ton of survivors following him. I think the best part of that change is, if you played the original Dead Rising, only 8 survivors could ever occupy the map, which, when certain cases, like a strange group come up, that's the one where you have to fight Sean in the movie theater, that puts 5 survivors on the map until the case expires, or you go kill Sean and solve it, and then you escort those survivors back. This can create a lot of survivor congestion, and new scoops will not crop up until they're taken off the map. So you might end up getting a new case with barely any time left on it to solve because, well, you just didn't get to that 5-man one quick enough. Getting rid of that limit now will now let the cases crop up at the proper time, so you can accordingly plan your strategy to deal with them, if you can, of course. Frank can now also move while he's aiming his firearms and various items too. I like this change a lot since certain bosses, like Cletus for instance, are beaten pretty easily with proper positioning and being able to make finer adjustments while aiming instead of just having to drop out of your aim and move is such a good change. Even if Frank having to be stationary to get accurate shots since he's an inexperienced survivor who needs to take aim first, makes a lot of sense. I'm glad this is changes here though. Melee weapons now have a little durability bar at all times instead of just flashing before they're going to break like in the original. You can now also use big items to protect yourself from gunfire, which is a cool change too. As for the stuff that I can't see myself right now, Capcom has mentioned just making general improvements to the AI for the survivors, most likely taking notes from DR2 or off the record even. Perhaps in this one we'll be able to posse up like in vanilla Dead Rising 2. Imagine rolling up to a boss with like 3 shotgun-armed survivors, 3 hunting rifle survivors, and like 2 with knives or something. We are going to have vandalized the fuck out of Chapman's store. But honestly, as long as the AI functions better than the original, I'll be happy. Even if all I really did when escorting was mark point A, so my idiot survivors stay put, sprint to point B, mark it, and then just run interference till everybody gets to where they need to be. A really interesting feature being added is the ability to accelerate time now, which I imagine will be very useful for subsequent playthroughs of the game. Scratch that, a time acceleration device will always be useful, even on your first playthrough. I realized this after playing Dead Rising again. Yes, there will be a video coming, and there were quite a few times when I had about 2 hours or 3 hours or so till the next case, but that just simply wasn't enough time to actually go and solve another scoop that was available. It'll be nice to blaze through the last few hours in the game too, since during my most recent playthrough I kind of just stood around for about 12 hours or so waiting for Ed to get back to pick me up. This is definitely going to be a nice feature for sure, if I, feel like just skipping through it. The game is also offering a bunch of new language options, which is cool, since more and more people will now be able to enjoy Dead Rising. Audio-wise, though, the only thing I'm genuinely curious about is what is the status of the game's licensed music? Will they be returning? Because the convict fight just isn't going to hit the same if Gone Guru isn't blaring in the background. And in the middle of editing this one, Capcom has confirmed that, yes, the licensed tracks will be returning in the Deluxe Remaster, so it's Gone Guru time once again, boys and girls. We'll have to see come full release of the game in September, which I can't believe this game is coming out that quickly. Knock on wood, of course. What I'm looking forward to greatly outnumbers what's disappointing me so far, so I'm very, very much looking forward to getting my hands on this one. Anyway, I'll call this video now, since I don't want to ramble too much about the gaming industry not disappointing me for once. For once, though, the AAA side of the equation is making me happy, even if it's just one company. I'm very much looking forward to the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, the original Resident Evil re-releases, and Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, which you can pre-order on Steam right now, including the Digital Deluxe Edition, bringing back Capcom's tradition of having an incredibly long name for no reason in particular. As always, dearest viewers, my name is HadesManticore, and this here channel is CityStateManticore. Thanks a ton for watching if you did. If you're hyped for any of these things as well, feel free to drop a fat comment below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe as well, since, as always, there's more content to come. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.